Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for the Addams Family. And what the Addams Family is essentially about is basically we center around, well, the Addams Family. You know, they're going about their daily lives and things like that. But there also is this real estate owner named Margot Needler. She's someone who's on a extreme makeover home edition type show, and basically she wants to make sure that every house looks the best that it possibly can. And when realizing how the Addams Family looks and how starkly different it is than everyone else's, she realized she needs to get a little bit dirty and basically tries to do what she can to sabotage them and basically ruin their family in the hopes of continuing to get into the good graces of the community. And that's really all I'm going to say. So the Addams Family overall, I was at first looking forward to this movie. You know, I do enjoy the property. I think there's a lot you can do with it. I even enjoy the original film from the 90s. I haven't seen Addams Family Values, but I watched the 90s one a couple of years back, and I actually really did enjoy it for sure. I think that's a really fun, I think that's a really fun live action film that does a really good job of paying tribute to, of course, the original 50 show and things like that. And so at first I thought this could be a really fun film, but then as the marketing went on, I just started to get less and less interested. I was hoping, though, that this could very much deliver, and it really didn't. The Addams Family has to be one of the dullest and probably boring animated films that I've seen in recent memory. There just isn't really a lot here to recommend overall, and we'll get into that. But first, of course, we're going to get into the cast. Which, look, there's a lot of things that bring this film down. I don't think the voice cast is one of them. I think mostly everyone does do a really good job here. I mean, Oscar Isaac and Charlize Theron, those are probably the best casting choices for Gomez and Morticia, and they really do give it their all here. Despite the fact that they don't really have as much to do as you may have hoped, they do a really good job. They do have some solid chemistry. They work really well together. I think, Morticia especially has some really strong moments, and I was overall impressed by them as voice actors. They don't do anything amazing, and I do kind of wish that this was live action because I feel like they could have brought more to the role that wasn't there in animated form, but I did really like what they did here overall, and I think that they do carry the film nicely. For me, though, the absolute standout of this film is Chloë Grace Moretz as Wednesday Addams. And look, yes, is she way too old to play this role? Absolutely. But you know what? She gives it her all here. And I thought she did a really great job just showing how just nihilistic and just how dark of a character Wednesday really is. This is a very eccentric sort of character. And Moretz just really gives it her all. I think out of everyone, Wednesday felt the most developed in this film. And I really did love what she brought here. She definitely had me laughing at quite a few points. I was most into the film when it was focusing on her, and I thought Moretz overall just really did a good job with this role. And if there's any reason why I'd want to see this iteration again, it's just to see what else they could do with her as a character, because I thought she was a lot of fun here. The rest of the cast also does do some solid work. Finn Wolfhard is good as Pugsley. I actually didn't mind Nick Kroll that much here. I'm usually very 50-50 when it comes to him, but I thought he was a solid Uncle Fester. He wasn't really anything that bad, despite the fact they didn't really have much to do. I didn't think he was all that bad here. Bette Midler does a solid job. The two roles, though, that I thought were really miscasted. First of all, Snoop Dogg as Cousin It. I don't know what they were trying to go for here, but really anyone could have played this role, and I don't know why they so heavily marketed him. He's in this movie for maybe like 10 minutes at most. He has only like 2 or 3 lines, and I don't know why they got him. I really don't understand what they were trying to do, but he's fine, I guess. But easily the worst performance is Allison Janney, and I hate saying that because I usually really do love her, but I did not think she was good in this movie. She was far too over the top. She's really just playing up that like cliche, like just maniacal villain that's trying to like take over the entire town or whatever, and I just did not like her at all. I did not think that she was well casted here. Again, I'm usually a big fan of her, but I think Janney does a much better job playing more reserved, subtler evil characters, like more of who she played in Hairspray. Like, that's the kind of villain that she should play, not what she's doing here. This just did not really suit her that well at all. I love Allison Janney, but I was not a fan of her here. But other than her, I think everyone did do a really good job here for the most part. But now let's get to the directing and the writing, which this is where we get to the stuff that really brings this film down. The directing here just isn't very good. It didn't really seem like Conrad, Vernon, and Greg Tiernan had a really good understanding of what they wanted this movie to be. It doesn't really have a very good tone. There are points where they're trying to go for something really fun and energetic, and they're really trying to play up on the Addams Family isms and things like that. And then there are points where they're just trying to make this another really generic animated movie. And it just, there's not much of a style here. A lot of the jokes don't really work. The tone itself, again, it's very jumbled. Half of it feels like a typical animated movie. Then the other half feels like it's trying to go for something completely different. And I just don't really know what was going on directing-wise. I don't really have a lot to say because I just don't think they brought a lot to the table here. The writing is easily the biggest problem here. I mean, if you listen to my plot description of this movie, not a lot of it really concerns the Addams Family. And that's mainly because even though, yes, the Addams Family is the focus of the movie, and yes, we cut back to them, the movie doesn't really, I think, I don't think the movie really utilizes them as well as it could have. At first, it does do a good job with that. The first, I want to say, like 20 minutes are actually really entertaining. When you're first getting to know the family, you're seeing just how eccentric and how certain things that people might see as unpleasant, they see as exciting. There's something really fun about that. And I think they do a really good job with getting you into this world. But once we get into the central plot, they start to feel less and less like the focus of this film. And we focus way too much on the Margot character. And because of that, it just makes for a film that is very relentlessly boring. I mean, this film does not have a lot of energy to it, surprisingly. And for an animated movie, I could see kids getting bored. I really could. I don't think this is the kind of film that is going to keep them that invested because it is very slow paced. It takes a long time for this movie to actually get interesting, and I think that might be a problem for some kids. I think if I was a kid especially, I could very much see myself getting bored just because of how slow it really was, and I was already getting bored, but a kid especially, I don't think this is going to entertain them all that well just because of how slow things really are. And there's a lot of things going on in this movie, but a lot of it does feel largely disconnected. There's a whole subplot with Pugsley especially that doesn't really feel like it plays that much of a role into this movie. It does eventually intersect into the main plot, but for a while, it doesn't really feel like it fits in there all that well. The best stuff, though, in the movie, as I said, is everything involving the character of Wednesday. They had a really good idea of what they wanted to do with this character. With her trying to go off to public school and her starting to blend in more with, normal kids and her wanting to look, dress like a normal teenager and things like that. That's a lot of fun. And they do a lot of fun stuff with that. And easily the best part of the movie is the relation between her and Elsie Fisher's character, Parker. I thought those two worked really well together. I really liked where they ended up going with her. And if the whole movie was just about that, I probably would have liked this movie because whenever we cut back to her, I actually was into it. The problem is that's only a fraction of this movie. The rest of the film is very, very dull, especially when we're focusing on Margot, who, like I said, is such a cliche villain. Everything about her, this is just this, she has this obsession with trying to make sure that the entire town looks exactly like she wants it to make sure that she stays, the most popular woman in the town and things like that. Going as far as to literally have like every single house on like surveillance and things like that. This is just a really weird character, and I don't know why they went with this storyline. If anything, this feels less like a movie and more like just a random TV episode of the Addams Family. It really does, and I know a lot of people have said that, but that's very much the case. The plot of this movie doesn't really feel like one that really lends itself to a film, and that's because it doesn't. After a while, this joke really does start to wear thin. The plot itself is just not really one that you're really grasping onto, mainly because the Addams don't really know what Margot is truly capable of. They don't know that Margot is planning to ruin them in that way. They don't even think much of it. They are pretty much adverse to society in that way. You know, the second that they realize that there's a whole other section of the town that isn't all foggy and things like that, they just don't really blend in all that well. And there isn't, besides Wednesday blending with Parker, there isn't a point where they're starting to blend more with the town. So it just doesn't make for a very, it doesn't make for a very entertaining watch in that way. And I think that's what really brings this entire film down. It essentially just doesn't work in that way, and I don't think they do a really good job writing-wise. There's also a really weird direction that the plot goes in the third act, and it's not even the third act, it's literally the ending of the movie. There's a certain twist that happens, and I was like, wait, what? Like, I had no idea how we got here. There was nothing in the film that was building it up. There was nothing in the film that seemed like it was going to where it was, and it just felt like such a random direction. I don't know why they decided to go in this direction at all. It was very odd, especially where they were going in the third act, and it felt like there was like a fraction of the film that was cut in that way. Like, they meant to have something there, and it just wasn't, and it was just very odd overall. And I should also say, this movie is not subtle at all. The message that they're going for, especially in the third act, is very much shoved down your throat and really did annoy me. They were clearly trying to add some kind of like real world issues here, and I don't know why they thought that had any place in this movie. It really didn't. I think this film could have just been a lot of fun, and it just wasn't. And again, the writing really does bring it down, unfortunately. Besides the Wednesday stuff, I just wasn't really all that into it. So yeah, that didn't really work for me. And the animation here, look, I will say this, when it's focused on the Addams and the look of like their mansion and things like that, it's really well done. I think the look and feel is definitely correct. They do a really good job with that for sure. Whenever we venture outside of that mansion, the animation is horrendous looking. The humans especially are so fucking ugly to look at, and I think it's mainly because of the fact that they spend so much time on the look and feel of the Addams that they didn't bother the look of the rest of the humans, and it's just not a very appealing design. It really took me out of the movie very often, and especially because we spend a lot of time outside of that mansion, it really was taking me out of the film. Margot especially, her look I wasn't really all that into. I don't think she looked really all that great, and Parker as well. I mean, just the human designs are not really all that great. Again, the Addams themselves look fine, but the other humans, no, it didn't really work at all, and I did not think the animation was really that great here. It's also it also does feel fairly bland. It's not really like the colors don't pop in the way they should, and it's just weird to say that with an animated movie, but that's the case here. The animation just isn't very strong. The score is fine when it's not this rap song that's playing of the Addams Family theme. When it's not that, the score is pretty solid. And the editing, like I said, this film is very much a slog. And I can't believe I'm saying that because it's only like 80-something minutes, but it really is hard to get through unless we're focusing on Wednesday. I was pretty much bored throughout this entire film, and I think, honestly, they should have focused this movie more on just the Addams trying to acclimate to society. I think that would have been a much better story, but that's not the one they went with for some reason. That's what they went with for Wednesday, but the other Addams, that's not really what they went with, and I don't really understand. I feel like that could be a very fun sort of plots, something like the Brady Bunch movie where like they're so disconnected and that's kind of like the joke and things like that. I feel like that actually could have really worked, but that's not what they really go for here. They're going for something much different. They're going for this really just not unsubtle message of just being yourself and things like that just really didn't work for me. Ultimately, The Addams Family is not a bad movie, but it's the definition of just such a dull and boring film. There are definitely things here that do work. Like I said, I thought Wednesday Addams was really good. I did like the rapport between the family overall, but it has a story that is so uninteresting and just doesn't really go anywhere that exciting, and especially in the third act, it just isn't really satisfying where it ends up paying off. The payoff is just not really there at all, and just overall, as a film, this just is very disappointing. And like I said, this film is incredibly disposable and something that I'm very much going to forget. In fact, I think I already have, because I saw another movie after Addams Family. I did a double feature of this and another film, which I will review in my next video. But upon walking into that movie, I started to forget that I saw this movie. It's that forgettable. Literally walking into another movie, I had forgotten the previous movie I had seen. That rarely happens when I do a double feature. I at least have the knowledge that I saw it. But literally walking in, it just dawned on me. I was like, oh yeah, this is not the only movie I saw today. Like, that's how truly just forgettable this film is. Do I think there's a chance that they could flesh this, iteration of this series, this particular iteration of the Addams Family more? Maybe they could make it more interesting, but as it is right now, it really didn't work for me at all. So unfortunately, I am going to give the Addams Family overall a C-. So overall, guys, in my review, the Addams Family, know what you guys thought of this movie overall. If your thoughts on it, we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.